I just came back a few days ago from the Esped. I was there, one of the 850,000 people, as you heard, in the biggest alvaya, the biggest assembly of Jews, perhaps from the second Beit Sheni. Od lo haya davar kazeh. And it's hard to describe what it was like. But one thing did stand out, and we all felt it. A tremendous hitorerut, a tremendous awakening, a tremendous assembly, a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. Even the secular reporters had tears in their eyes. In order to understand Manil Kachmi Tanu, what was taken from us, we have to understand Mahayalanu. What did we have with us for 93 years? Rabbis tell us in the Gemara, HaKadosh Baruch Hu ra'ah tzadikim mu'atim. Tzadikim are very, very few. Shatlam otam bechol dor vador. So he planted them in every generation. The question is, why didn't the rabbis tell us zar'an? Why shatlan? Zar'an means to seed, to plant. Maze shatlan? The word shatlan means to transplant. Davar shegadal v'tzamach v'makom echad v'yanak ve'eviru oto v'shatlu oto v'makom acher. Something that was already growing, was already nourishing from the ground, that was transplanted to another spot. In other words, there were very big tzaddikim once upon a time that nourished from beautiful generations. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I need those tzaddikim for future generations, when they will have none. Rav Aaron Kotler Zecher Tzaddik Lebracha, the Rosh Hashiva of Lakewood, said that he heard that there were Gdolim during the time of the Gaon of Vilna who said that the Gaon of Vilna belonged to another generation. But because in his generation there were Talmidei Chachamim who felt that they were Chachamim Gedolim, Hevi lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu et HaGaon MiVilna to show them and to teach them, Ze Gadol BaTorah. You think you're Chachamim? This is a Chacham. This is a Gadol. Ulezeh tzarich lishof ulehagia. I think there is a consensus amongst all the big Chachamim of our generation. The Chacham Ovadia Yosef belonged to another generation. There was nothing like him for many, many years. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu shatal oto bador hazeh because this generation needs him. One of the commentators on the Gemara, the Netivot, says as follows: in order for us to properly appreciate a tzaddik, a chacham, the Gemara says as follows: Im harishonim hayu kemalachim, anachnu kebnei adam. V'im hem hayu kebnei adam, anachnu kechamorim. In other words, if the previous generations were like angels, we are like regular, ordinary human beings. And if they were ordinary human beings, then we are like donkeys. So the Netivot asks a question, Ma, Gemara po mistapeket? Is it this way or is it this way? And the Netivot says, no. The Gemara is talking about attitude. It's talking about perspective. If we look at the Rishonim as angels, as malachim, then we are Bnei Adam. We're normal. That's the way to think. But if we think of them as Bnei Adam, like us, equivalent to us, then we're Hamorim. Oy vavoy, chas v'shalom, for one to think that the Gedolim are just ordinary men just like us. They are Malachim. I heard all the Hespedim, and somehow there was one Gemara that I wish would have been mentioned. Nobody mentioned this Gemara. The Gemara in Masechet Nedarim says, Izaharu bivnei aniyim ki mehem tetzeh Torah. Do you know the Chacham Ovadia grew in a very simple family? They were very poor, simple people. His father was not a big Gaon, not tremendous Talmid Chacham. He came from a simple family. In the Gemara, the rabbis warn us, Hizaharu bivnei aniyim. Be careful how you treat them. Make sure you allow them into school even though they can't afford the tuition. Ki mehem tetzeh Torah. You'll be surprised. But from the poorest and the simplest families, that's where Torah will come from. This is the biggest raya nochacha that we have, that he came from the poorest and simplest families. But the question is, of course, why do the Chachamim emphasize this point so much? They emphasize this point because we can all reach great heights. We all have tremendous potentials. Every Jew has tremendous potential. So hizaharu. Be very careful in how we treat another individual. Give everybody a fair chance. He may one day become a Gadol BaTorah. I want to share with you a story that probably none of you heard, even though we heard some beautiful stories just now. This is an incredible story of who Chacham Ovadia Yosef was. It shows his Ahavat Israel, as was mentioned earlier. It shows Gadlut. It shows so much about who he was. And this happened about a year ago on a bus. There was an individual who was having a hard time with his kids. He was teaching immigrant children. He was having a difficult time with them. They were difficult kids. Somebody approaches him and says, be patient with them. You see me? I have a beard. I have a long black coat. I was not always like that. I have been a Dayan for 25 years and I'm taking an early retirement now. But you know who I was when I was a youngster? Aiti Avaryan. That's what they called me in my neighborhood. I was a child born to Holocaust survivors. And because I didn't receive a Jewish education, I turned out to be a criminal. We were playing soccer when I was a teenager. One Shabbat, he says, we were playing soccer. And I hit the ball very, very hard. And as the rabbi was coming out from the synagogue, the ball hit his hat. And his hat fell off, and we all started laughing. This rabbi came over to me and said, would you like to come over for Kiddush? Are you hungry? And I was very, very hungry, he says. I came over to his home, and he gave me to eat. He asked me, do you want to sleep a little bit? I said, yes, I'm very tired. I went to sleep. Motzei Shabbat came, and the rabbi asked me, what do you want to do now? I want to go to the movie theater. Here's some money, go to the movie theater. This repeated itself several weeks until this child became closer and closer to this rabbi. And as a result of that closeness, the rabbi was able to teach him, later to send him to a yeshiva, later to marry him off, and later to see him grow to become a Dayan B'Israel. And who was this rabbi? Chacham Ovadia Yosef. Incredible story. And the question is, Ech megiim lezeh? It's a question that we all should be asking ourselves. How do we come to this? This past week's parasha, we see how the Torah describes Avraham Avinu at various stages in his life. In the Midrash it says, Hu yada et bor'o, when he was 3 years old. When he came to Eretz Yisrael, he was 75. When he was asked to perform the Brit Milah himself, he was 99. Why is the Torah telling us all these ages, all these birthdays? Ma chashivut b'zeh? 3, 50, 70, 75, 99. Why so many details as to the age of Avraham Avinu? Because Gadlut comes behadraga. Growing up comes gradually. It does not come overnight. And what happens at 99 years old? HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu, Ithalech lefanai ve'yeh tamim. Now, at age 99, liyot tamim? Ma, ad achshav lo hayiti tamim? No, lo maspik. Shlemut, completeness, comes in stages. And even if you're 99, you still have something to complete. You still have something to accomplish. Chacham Ovadia, even when he was 93 years old, almost towards the very, very end of his life, he was still learning every single day. Through constant hatmada, mesirut, udvekut b'matara, constant devotion and dedication, that is how one rises to be a tremendous Gadol B'Yisrael. But the question is that all? Through constancy and devotion? Many people are matridin, many people are devoted and dedicated, and we don't see such hatzlacha. There's a difference between liot gadol velatzliach. Latzliach is something completely different. To be mashpia on so many of Am Yisrael, there's some siyu'ah mishamayim here. There's some divine assistance involved over here. What is required to be matzliach? I was thinking about the difference of Noach and Avraham. In last week's parasha, 2 weeks ago actually, Rashi says, you know what the difference between Noach and Avraham was? Noach היה צריך סעד לתומכו. He was a ma'amin, he was a tzaddik, he was a tamim, but he needed a boost, he needed a support, משמיים, שתמיד יהיה חזק. Avraham הולך ומתחזק בצדקו, Rashi says. He did not need any support. Okay, יפה מאוד. That's the difference between Avraham and Noach. But why does Avraham have an advantage over Noach? We see the difference about why does he have an advantage. And I was thinking the reason why Avraham had an advantage is because of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. Moshe zacha וזיכה את הרבים, זכות הרבים תלוי בו. Moshe was zoche. He was meritorious, he achieved a lot, but he was also benefiting the masses. זיכה את הרבים, to benefit the masses. זיכוי הרבים, tremendous זכות. זכות הרבים תלוי בו. In other words, a tremendous amount of koach is derived from the tzibur. Zchuyot and koach. Avraham Avinu, because hu zika et harabim v'kirev otam, sha'av et hakoach merabim. He was able to derive so much strength from the Rabim. Noach didn't have that. That is the koach of somebody who's mezakeh Rabim. And we all know that Chacham Ovadia, through his shiurim, whether it was by satellite or whether it's through the radio, through his chiburim and sfarim, zacha v'zika et harabim. That is why he was able to be shoev tremendous koach and have tremendous siyata d'shmaya as a result of that. I want to just share with you another quick story that Arav Peretz, Rabbah Shel Ra'anana, said, "Shachshav mitzvah u'mutar lefarsem." It must have been about 20 years ago. Chacham Ovadia said he had a dream. And in the dream he sees the Ben Ish Chai coming to his house. So Chacham Ovadia brings him into his Otzar Sfarim. He has a big library. He takes out one volume of Yabi'a Omer, says, "Please look at what I wrote." Ben Ish Chai matchil ledafdef. He begins to look through the book, and Chacham Ovadia tells him in the dream, "I wish I could write more. אבל יש לי טורח ציבור כזה גדול, I'm so busy and occupied with ענייני הציבור." So the Ben Ish Chai turns to him and tells him, "You should know that all that you've done for the tzibur, יותר חשוב מכל מה שכתבת." Whatever a person does for the tzibur is more important than anything else. More than כל מה שכתבת. And we know how much we benefit from what he wrote. ענייני הציבור. But in order for one to be successful in ענייני הציבור, he has to do it l'shem shamayim. As we read in Pirkei Avot, Kol halomeh Torah lishma zocheh ledvarim harbe. If you learn Torah lishma, then you zocheh ledvarim harbe. Chacham Ovadia zachah ledvarim harbe as a result of his l'shem shamayim. That is the key to the success. That is the key to be able to receive siyata d'shmaya. Not just to learn a lot and to know a lot, but to be mashpia and to do it l'shem shamayim. What I think, lefi aniyut dati, in my humble opinion, what we can learn from his passing is three important ideals. Three important ideals. One is lolit batel, not to lose one moment that we have to our disposal. We're all busy, we work, but we have free moments, not to waste them. Kol rega yakar v'chashuv, every moment is precious. How could we face bedin shel mala lachar me'ah ve'esrim when they tell us you spent more time on the internet, reading the news, reading the sports section, reading shtuyot v'havalim, more time spent on that than on Torah? How will we be able to justify it? So much time is being wasted today. There's so many distractions. It's tremendous nisayon. It therefore requires tremendous kochot, tremendous focus on the ikara ikarim, which is Torah. That's the ikara ikarim. So one of the things that perhaps we could learn from this to strengthen is lachshiv kol rega shel Torah, to learn as much as possible. Lachzor u'leshanen, what we learned already, so that we not forget. V'la'asot dvarim l'shem po'alam, to do things l'shem shamayim. And number three, not to forget that this is the door of kiruv. Lezakot et harabim kama sheyoter. We may be happy with ourselves, but there's so many Jews out there who are so distant and so thirsty, and nobody wants to bring them to the Bet HaKnesset or to Shiur Torah. They're waiting for that moment. One maaseh katan, one small little deed, one phone call can make a big difference. It can take a avaryan velasot oto mimeno dayan beYisrael. Litchashev, to care, to show consideration, velezakot harabim. If we do this, then we will be emulating the derech of the tzaddik Chacham Ovadia Yosef. And if we emulate him, אז בטח זכותו יגן עלינו, ובקרוב כולנו נזכה שהובא לציון גואל ולשב יפה שב יעקב.